Okay, here we are about 7 miles past the top of Montebello Road. I came down the Bella Vista Trail, then took the White Oak Trail around, and then I believe this is called Skid Road. Farther up there, it actually follows an old logging skid road. The road was crisscrossed with logs, and they would then skid, I guess, Douglas fir up the hill. They used to haul it out along Skyline Boulevard, whatever it was called back then. And if you go that way north on Skyline, just half a mile, you run into Page Mill Road. Page Mill Road was built by a fellow named George Page, who had a sawmill down on San Francisco Bay. I guess the town was called Mayfield, and it later became part of Palo Alto. Page Mill Road was built in the 1860s to haul logs to Page's Mill. I guess they were hauling Douglas fir up out of the east slope here, and then on the other side, on the west slope, they were hauling redwood up, and then trucking it down Page Mill Road to Page's Mill. Anyway, that's where the skid road comes down from Skyline Highway 35, and then it crosses over the creek. I think this is still part of that road, much wider than a bike trail would be. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to talk about one thing here. I got in a discussion on a local road bike forum, and the fellow, I guess, has a friend with I think it's maybe a 2x11 road bike, but apparently she wants a lower gear for climbing steeper hills. I guess he was looking at 3 options for that bike. One was to switch from 700C down to like a 650B wheel and tire to get a little bit smaller diameter. The second option was to change cranks, maybe go to something like a compact crank. And then the third option was to go to a bigger cassette to get a better climbing gear. Yeah, where I entered the discussion, the fellow was saying if he went to a larger cassette, he would have to do something like this RoadLink adapter to lower the rear derailleur so that it would clear the larger cog. He said he had gone to the WolfTooth webpage, and he said he was a bit confused because they said the RoadLink here would allow a larger cog, which would allow a larger gear range between your lowest and highest gear, but it doesn't increase the chain wrap capacity on your rear derailleur. He was confused by how could you do all of those things yet not increase the capacity. And so that's where I jumped in and said it does all of those things. So this derailleur max cog rating is 34 tooth. Well, I'm running a 45 tooth, so that's 11 teeth over the maximum rating of this, and this has a maximum chain wrap of 45 teeth. Well, I've got 58. So I'm 13 teeth over the maximum wrap. And you can see it doesn't pull the chain. That's in the 8th cog here. So I normally don't use that. I only go up to maybe 5 or 6 in the small ring, because if I go past that, the chain gets slack, but it's still rideable. I can still pedal the bike like this. I mentioned to the fellow that I'll only do that in certain cases. So like this trail just around the corner, there's a bridge across a little stream, and then there's a pretty steep climb, so you need to be in the small ring to get up that steep climb. But then here, for maybe 100 yards, it's relatively flat, and I could shift into the middle ring and hammer down this section, but right up there there's a 180 turn and the road starts climbing again. So yes, I could shift to the middle ring for 100 yards and then shift back down to the small ring, but I just leave it in the small ring. The 6th cog is about the last ratio or last combination where the chain is reasonably tight, but I can go all the way to the 10th cog. I just don't normally go past 6, but I won't use 7 through 10. So that's 4 combinations that I don't use because the chain goes slack. Here I will use it. It's easier than shifting twice. A couple of things that I don't do when I'm in that combination is I don't backpedal because it would probably drop a chain. And I also don't do rocky, steep descents because I would probably drop a chain because it's not tight. But if it's relatively smooth, flat trail and it's not that far, I will ride like that. I'm fully aware that the chain is not tight. And I imagine there's people on their keyboards right now saying that I'm breaking every cycling rule. You know? Yes, the chain goes slack and it'll hang down a couple of inches if I go all the way to the smallest cog. I never do that, but I can. I can shift into the smallest cog and I can shift out. And likewise, I can also do the big ring to the big cog. It's pretty tight, but it will go there. I can shift into that combination and I can shift out. And so in the big ring, I don't use the first 4 cogs. I just stick to the smaller 6. So I'm giving up 4 and 4 combinations, but it turns out those gear ratios are duplicated in the middle ring. Small ring is a 20 and the 6th cog is a 20, which gives you a 1-to-1 ratio. Well, my middle ring is 32 and there's a 32 tooth cog. I think it's the 3rd cog. So I've got 1-to-1 in the middle ring. All of the 4 small ring combinations on the outside of the cassette are duplicated on the middle ring at the big side of the cassette. So of those 8 combinations that I avoid, they're available in the middle ring. So anyway, when I mentioned that to this fellow, he said, I never thought about not using the combinations where your chain goes slack. Well, just don't use them, you know, or use them with caution. That's what I do. The thing that helps on my bike is I have these, they were originally called the Retro Shift. I think they're now Gevenalle Shifters. So these are bar end shifters that are mounted on the brake levers. And the nice thing I like with these, or if you had bar end shifters, is you can physically see what gear you're in. The way I have it set up, if I'm pointed all the way over like that, I'm in the small cog, and if I'm pointed all the way over like this, I'm in the big cog. If I can look down and see the shifter sticking out past the brake lever, I know my chain is going slack. But I have it set up so I can physically shift all 30 combinations. I did have one viewer on a previous video say, oh, well, why don't you just remove some links out of the chain and it wouldn't go slack? Yes, I could do that, but then I would not be able to shift into the big combination. And if I tried, I would probably break something. So I would rather have the big combination work, but not use it, than having something break because I forgot that it doesn't work. Out of the 30 speeds, I probably have 20 usable ratios. That's the case no matter what. But yeah, that is an option. You don't have to keep your chain perfectly tight. You can see as long as you pedal, the top chain stays tight. If you have any questions, post up in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.